there's beer, and there was some snacks, looks like. Ooh, exciting. All right, so this is a talk that I've given before, sort of workshop length. So it's going to be a little bit longer than an hour, but hopefully I'm going to be as entertaining as possible to keep you awake. Who here worked a full day today? I don't really do much around here, so I'm wide awake. I'm not tired at all. Yeah, I'm very excited about this topic. We're going to be all over the map on this talk. First, let me get another sort of temperature here. Who here has experienced the Outage website? Who here has answered a pager? Who here has a pager right now? All right. If you jump up and run out, I won't feel a bit bad if something goes wrong with your site. So, like I said, there's a lot that I want to cover here, and in thinking about all of these topics, I tried to cram as much as I could into it. There's going to be I don't actually expect this to go as planned, most like anything that I do. I'm going to be asking a lot out of all of you. There's some abstract thinking involved. There's not going to be math. There's not going to be code, but you're going to have to stretch a little bit. I'm going to be challenging some common sense views with what is commonly known in other industry or another field as the new view. And this other field is this field that I feel super excited about. It's called resilience engineering. It's a field of research that's really close to practitioners, that has grown out of human factors and system safety and something called cognitive engineering. These are the guys that I'm going to be ripping off for the next hour. If you don't know or recognize their names, then you should. As far as I'm concerned, everything that they've ever written in the last 5 years should be required reading for anybody who's in any web operations organization of scale. Here's some background. The background is going to take just a little bit here. What I'm talking about here and what we talk about with websites are complex and dynamic systems. Complex systems have a bunch of different behaviors. They are not like a seesaw at the playground. They are different than complicated. Complex systems have nonlinear behaviors. You can tweak something just a little bit, and the entire site can go down. You can have small perturbations, small disturbances can have large effects. Large disturbances can have small effects. As we like to build these things, we like to build them to be adaptive and absorb disturbances, but more on that later. The other thing about complex behaviors is that their behaviors are emergent, which means that, sorry to get all academic-y systems theory on you, but it means that behaviors of the system that you're building, the system that you're maintaining, this complex system, can arise out of the interactions between components in the system. Anybody who's ever had any queuing in their system understands this. That only come in tight coordination or random coordination of behaviors that happen. Again, we're going to talk a little bit more about this. And also, complex systems exert this other behavior, which is awesome and makes for great stories at the bar: cascading failures. Again, complex systems are not complicated systems. I want to make a quick set the stage for what I mean by that. A lot of people say that, I'm working on this complex system, or there's lots of complexity here, or this is super complicated and therefore it's very complex. You're conflating a couple of, to be all technical semantic about it, you're conflating some things when you say those, you're conflating some terms. This isn't my description of somebody else's. My car key is simple. My car is complicated. Traffic is complex. There's a difference between my car, which has a number of behaviors because of various components. There's a lot of components that do various things. And for the most part, the whole is the sum of its parts. Complex systems do not have a situation where its entire behavior is nothing but of the sum of its behaviors at the component level. Which means that, unlike what Isaac Newton and René Descartes would have you believe, you can't just take it apart like a little clock, look at the little pieces. Oh, look, this does this thing, put it all back, and expect to know everything that happens, right? Does this sound familiar? Cool. We work with crazy shit. Fundamental surprises. When we talk about outages and complex systems failures, we're talking about fundamental surprises. I'm going to repeat an excellent anecdote that is not mine. Daniel Webster, the dictionary dude. There is the story. He is out in town. He comes home early. He comes home to find that his wife is in bed with his servant. Now, in this scenario, she is surprised to see him walk in. He is fundamentally surprised. He is astonished. What's the difference between a surprise and a fundamental surprise, which is the thing that happens when the website goes down or you have a degradation, or the things that we deal with when bad shit goes wrong, is that it was very possible to his wife, maybe she even considered it plausible, that he could walk in that door. Before the event happened, she could imagine it. Before that event happened for him, very unlikely, probably implausible for him to imagine it. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about outages and the postmortems that follow. A couple more slides on background. I want to make it specific. This is Eric Hallnagel, who is one of those researchers that should be also very familiar. And that is the idea that there is always a balance between being efficient and being thorough. Okay, you've heard phrases of done is better than right, variations on this form, right? And quite often what we'll do is we'll have an outage, and then later on you'll talk about the outage and stuff that we'll talk about later, and you'd be like, you know what, this wouldn't have happened if we were a little bit more thorough, if we had just written that test. Or we had if we built it right the first time. We're going to talk about that. We all make decisions to trade off efficiency, especially in web infrastructures, for thoroughness. Otherwise, we wouldn't get anything done, and it would be very boring. So, two more things. Organizational resilience, which we will touch on, and system safety make two distinctions in organizations. There's the blunt end, which is normally thought of as management, but doesn't actually have to be management. These are the folks in your organization that provide all of the procedures and the resources, the constraints. They're the people who go get funding. They're the people who build this office. They're the people who go look at office space. They're the people who provide you with the resources to do your job. And it also provides the constraints with which. There is the sharp end, by the way, so that was called the blunt end. The sharp end are the practitioners, the folks that are working with the technology, the complex systems at hand. They have their hands in it. And these are the people who respond to outages, who provide a huge amount of unspoken resilience in the system that they're building. So, what this talk about is about the past. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book called The Art of Capacity Planning, and that was about telling the future. This is about telling the past. And surprisingly, very surprisingly, it is way harder to tell the past than it is the future. And I'm going to prove it to you a little bit later. So first, why do we do them? Who here has been to a postmortem meeting? Okay. Who here hasn't? Okay. Why do we have them? Well, we have them so we have this idea that we can understand the failure that happened. We have them so that we can understand the system that that it happened to. System is a funny definition. As you can imagine, I'm a little bit hot on that particular term. It can mean the cables and the data centers and the routers and the switches and all of that sort of thing. And it also means the people involved in the organization who are part of it. They are absolutely part of it. There is a boundary, but shit, it is a dashed and dotted line between man and machine and the systems that we work with. The people are is what makes postmortem meetings awesome or sucky. It makes working awesome or sucky. Humans control. When things go wrong, humans are involved. When things go well, humans are involved. There is no amount of automation that can automate a postmortem meeting. It's all on us to ultimately to learn, and this is why we have postmortem meetings. So, to set the stage here, there are so-called 4 cornerstones of resilience engineering. And by the way, resilience is what we're aiming for. We are never going to build a perfect system because we can't predict because they're complex. So what we do want to build are adaptive and resilient systems. Anticipation is the first cornerstone. Imagining what could possibly go wrong and acting on that so that we can figure out what to do in the future. There is monitoring, which is knowing what to look for. We should all be familiar with this. There is response, which is knowing what to do at the time that things are going fundamentally surprising. And then there's the learning, and this is the piece that we're talking about. So there's this awesome movie called The Conversation with Gene Hackman. Has anybody seen it? All right, it's kind of an older movie. It's a super San Francisco style movie, but let me just set a 30-second stage for you. In San Francisco, at the very beginning, like the title sequence, there is a square called Union Square, and there's like a big patio, and there's all sorts of buildings and lots of around it. So it's a square, much like you would see in Manhattan. And there's this woman and man, and what they're doing is they're walking around this park that's inside Union Square. And little known to them, that Gene Hackman, who's this crazy spy audio dude, has all these shotgun microphones sticking out of the windows around all of it. And because he can mess with levels, recording levels and volume levels, he can follow their conversation. This sets the stage for the rest of the plot, the rest of the movie. When we build metrics, when we build checks, when we build Nagios and Graphite and Zirconis and all this other crazy stuff, we are turning on microphones. We're turning on microphones to watch things. These turn out not just to be important right now. They're important in the future, and they're important in the past. These should all look sort of somewhat familiar. These are graphs. We've got these, right? We might even have some amount of annotation. This event happened when this graph thing looked like this. We might have logs of people talking. IRC, who uses IRC? Or Campfire, or whatever, something like that, right? So people are talking. How many people have ever been in an engineering or a technical related channel and somebody posts a URL to a graph? Right? That is some of the best data that you could ever possibly gather. That is a microphone that is invaluable. Because when you have a timeline of people talking and you have traces of data that they say that they're conversing about, they're conversing about it because they think something's interesting about it. And this is going to be a big deal later. Now, when site goes down and you have maybe a status blog, you have maybe a Twitter account and says, oh, things are gonna screwed up. What are we, just hold tight there. We'll fix it. All of these things put together is essentially a flight data recorder. Right? It gathers everything from as much as you can during the situation. And why is this important? We'll get there in a second. Here's an example, the anatomy. This is actually, I was trying to think of it. Oh yeah, this was an outage where we had a payment provider. And one of the methods of payment that you can pay for things on Etsy went all wonky. Actually, the network to the payment provider for specific methods went all wonky. And here you can see there's alerts that went off, and then we posted to the blog, and then we turned that off because it was erroring. It wasn't helping anybody, so we gracefully degrade and say, oh, I'm sorry, you can't use this payment method, and then we fix it, and then the alerts clear and all of that sort of thing. There's a huge amount of information in this graph, but we wouldn't have it if we didn't have IRC logging, if we didn't have these other timeline, time-specific issues, time-specific details. So that's the most important thing, because if you don't have that data for the basic pieces of your postmortem, then you're not going to know what happened when. And this is really, really important, because when people are in stressful scenarios, possibly, whether we admit it or not, these are traumatic scenarios sometimes. People's adrenals are amped up, and people can misremember when things happened. Sometimes they feel long, sometimes they feel short. So here's the rundown of the basics. Hopefully you guys are recording this sort of thing. So in addition to this rich data that you have, narrowing down, when did this thing start? Okay, you might actually find this in hindsight because you might only know when something started when you detected something started. It may have started before you detected it. So when did it start? When did you detect it? How did you detect it? Did your public forums go crazy? Did you get an Outages alert? Did your grandmother call you? Did your CEO send you a page? Then there's the time that you resolve it. Yay! Or at least bring it to its previous service, okay? This is going to be important later. Then there's what I like to call stable, which is it's not only fixed, but it's absolutely back to where it was, possibly even better, but it's absolutely back to where it was. You can have something resolved, but say have a loss of redundancy. Everything's fine, except we don't have the secondary pair, that sort of thing. So then you have things that are stable, and then the entirety between start and the time that you resolved it, you might want to call that impact time or something. That is what your members or your users saw as an issue. So does this sound familiar to anybody? Okay, I'm just skimming over the basics real quick. So severity. How did the event impact the site? It helps with identifying what events even need postmortems, what events feel important to have a postmortem, and who might you even invite to the postmortem. This is usually quite obvious. If the site's down, then site's down. That's severe, sounds like. Here are suggestions. This is some of the things that Etsy uses. Other people use these sorts of things. So there's this severity 1. The site's down, or it's a severe degradation, or it's clearly obvious. Or there's a loss of a critical feature, right? The site's up, but nobody can pay for anything on Etsy. That's a Sev 1. The site's down. That's a Sev 1. Severity 2 is either a major degradation for a subset of users. South Africa can't hit the site. Or a minor degradation or a feature loss for everybody. You can't favorite anything, as an example. Severity 3s are like the third child in a family. They are easily ignored. You've got a couple of, you've got a lot of photos of the babies. If you get like 1/5 of the photos of the third kid, then, you're okay. You're probably in some good shape. You're covered because you got 2 other kids. I have 2 kids. Severity 4 is bonus, and these generally may not be recorded in postmortems, but in emails. And the same thing for Sev 5s, which is that it was unexpected. This arguably could be as important, Sev 5s and Sev 4s, as the Sev 2. Because it is an unexpected failure that it wasn't an impact, but you were fundamentally surprised. And that's no good, which is almost just as important, because you were fundamentally surprised that it didn't affect anything now. That may not happen the next time it happens. So you end up something like that looks like this. Now you got a little spreadsheet. You got a little, I don't know, some sort of application. I'm sure Atlassian will sell you something that will aggregate this stuff. This is just the beginning of this. This seems like the gist of it, and this also seems easy, right? But again, this is an unnatural act. You have a meeting after this thing that was very stressful. It's unnatural and it's hard. You're talking about something that was pretty painful. And like I said, people can misremember things. If people misremember things and they're still stuck on adrenaline rush and are kind of defensive because they feel like they had contributed to it, this is some navigational this is some waters you're going to need to navigate. So of course the idea is you want to try to find about how, why, and what can we do to fix this, to prevent this type of sort of thing in the future. So let's talk about the how. First, we need to establish this timeline. This is okay, because we've got all of our rich data. The problem with this is that it already sets the stage for us to start thinking linearly, and that's wrong, and it's a problem. We'll talk about that in just a second, but it kind of looks like this. Here's a common basic pattern of how things look, right? So, something's going wrong, and is this important enough to work on? Yeah, this seems like it's okay to work on. Okay, let's fix it. Oh, there's this bug in this thing that I hadn't planned for. All right, fix this. This is okay, and it looks good, and now we're okay. Okay, so now this is pretty evenly distributed. I made this up. But generally at a high view, this is what it looks like. Now, the people who are working on this, the people who are here in this room, if you were to plot stress over it, it kind of is going to end up looking like this, because people get all stressed out no matter what when when stuff breaks. Finding out how people were feeling during the issue is something you might want to gather, especially if you're leading the team, because it's going to help you inform you how unglued people get later. So here's another one. This is an embarrassing one. It took you a long time to even figure out something was wrong. This is embarrassing, because, perfect engineers and all. And stress kind of looks like this, right? It's like, oh, I don't know, logo was blue. And you might also see how much of a bummer it was to people as people behave during the outage, right? And the more embarrassing it is, and even especially if it was a really simple fix, and it feels like a really dumb bug, and it was super embarrassing, and you didn't find out for a long time, and you had to find out in a really bad way, like your investors called you. This is a big bummer, and people behave differently during this outage. Now, let's talk about this one. These are hard. Troubleshooting fatigue can set in, and this is absolutely indicative of complex failure, an unexpected, fundamentally surprising failure pattern. Long response recovery times bring new pitfalls to them. People behave differently. Let's put that aside for a second. Just want to take one quick point, and we're going to come back to this. Of course, during this situation, really successful companies make it a point of letting their community know that things are going on during and after the outage on a timely basis. Okay, you can tell the really successful company, the companies that are going to keep customers from the companies who don't do this. So let's go back here. What can happen here can infuriate, enthrall, fatigue, and energize the emotions of an entire organization. As long outages happen, people get unglued, troubleshooting fatigue sets in. How well this goes can have lasting effects on the designs you come up with, the culture that you try to build when it comes to responding to scenarios. It can't be overstated. Also, this is the reason why I'm in this field. this is the hard stuff. It means that it took you a long time to work it out. We were just talking about something that's happening at Etsy, not a Sev 1, for some period of time now, and it's a doozy. So what happens during crises? In knowledge-based levels of response, meaning I'm thinking about how to work this out, confusion and disorientation should be expected. When this happens, people are forced beyond their learned roles. Developers who have never worked in response maybe now be called to work on response, sharpen their sysadmin skills, and vice versa. Actions whose consequences are both important and difficult to see, which means that as you tweak things, this looks good, let's try to come up with this plan, we're going to noodle with these levers and knobs over here to see if it makes any difference. Sometimes you can't see the effects, but they still might be good. When you have a lot of people on a team, it's cognitively and perceptively noisy. There's a lot of people talking all at once. They're all excited. And coordinative load increases exponentially. Keeping a one thing at a time plan is really hard. How many here have been part of an outage where doing one thing at a time, seeing if it made a difference, merged together into more like, let's do 5 things at a time, right? This is what happens. There are names for these things. And this field that I mentioned earlier has names for this, and as it turns out, there's a huge amount of research about this. And it includes practitioners everywhere from emergency response to urban firefighting, from power plant management, think 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, to aviation. Jumping from one troubleshooting thread to another is what's called thematic vagabonding, or I've heard it called butterfly minds. This is where signals come in, you're unable to discern what signal is, even weak signals and strong signals, actually has something to do with what you're working on, so therefore you jump from one, ooh, look, ooh, there's an error. I haven't seen that error. Does that error happen all the time? I don't know. Guy goes off, it's been happening all the time. But he's spent a lot of time on chasing that down. Chasing these things down is where context switching, which we should all be familiar with, meets troubleshooting. Now the opposite of this, of course, is goal fixation. The firefighting field calls this insistment. This is where you are stuck with an irrational belief, maybe in the as even opposing signals come in that says you're wrong, you still have no, it's got to be this. It's got to be this. I'm telling you, it's DNS. I'm telling you, and I'm going to do this. And the guy goes off, and then he's just and he spends 3 hours, and it turns out it's not DNS. This can be exacerbated by scar tissue from previous experiences. You work on a site that runs mod Perl and SQLite, and the site goes down all the time. You leave that company and go somewhere else, you're going to be convinced that fuck mod Perl and screw SQLite. That's the thing, right? And then you come to this new company and it says SQLite, and as soon as the outage happens, you're like, it's fucking SQLite. I'll tell you, right? That's what it is. That's what it is. The scar tissue of yesterday informs the response scenarios of tomorrow. Then there is heroism, who is the Mr. Smart guy. Something's going wrong. You have a group of people. They're all in a room. Imagine there's lots of skillful communication going on. People talking about, oh, I'm seeing this. I'm seeing this. Oh, this looks like it's good. Maybe I should, change, load balancer weightings. Okay, good idea. You go ahead and do that. Imagine it's all really coordinative and actually a good response. They haven't fixed it yet. And then there's the guy in the corner who goes quiet. And he's not talking to anybody. And he's just like this. And then he's like, and he leaves the room, right? Because he's pretty sure he's pretty sure, right? That is this. Now, this is terrible, right? The guy who gets up and leaves. Now, what happens? If he's right, he's now taught the rest of the organization that problems are solved by lone smart players, which is wrong. If he's wrong, he's now annoyed the rest of his team and wasted a huge amount of time. This is also a problem. And then, of course, there's distraction. It has maybe more than once, I have told Chad Dickerson, who's my boss over there, shut the fuck up. Get out of the IRC. He's the CEO. Get out of IRC. You, and you, and you. It's time for you to go. Those cat videos are funny. However, now's not the time to share them. Communicating during escalating situations is paramount. And something about this, even well-meaning distraction, which is, and you can see this, you may recognize this, is the want, the yearning to have the postmortem while the issue is still going on, right? We're engineers, we want to solve these problems, we want to talk about them. Oh, I'm telling you, it's this. I mean, we don't have any proof or anything, but it's got to be this setting that's in MySQL, and whose fault is that? Jim, why did you change this? Like the guy's having the postmortem, the site's still down. So these are the types of things that happen that can further disorient in these escalating situations. I do want to take 1 second to talk about improvisation, because we need, as a field, to accept, we need to expect, and we need to train that improvisation is not only a valid but an extremely successful pattern in response scenarios. I'm going to give you 2 examples. Apollo 13, there is 250,000 miles separating the Earth and 3 guys who are in a fucking can. And shit goes wrong. And Gene Kranz says, everybody who's in mission control, you, and you, and you, and you, go in the room. We're going to fill it with only things that are in the capsule. Figure it out. And they improvised. There's duct tape. There's like gauze. There's like filters that come from something or whatever, and they worked it out. Under pressure, operators working in complex scenarios have adaptive capacities that cannot be overlooked. Here's another example. So, how did automation help this dude? Right? I love configuration management. I love me some Puppet. I love me some Chef. People have adaptive capacities, right? Many times catastrophes are averted because humans are just so much better. It's because of people's improvisation that can bring resilience. And if we don't recognize this and train for it, then we're going to be in a world of hurt. So now let's move on to the why. Why did this unexpected outcome happen, right? We can't work out what to do to prevent it unless we go over why it happened. And we can't get follow-up items. Now, a lot of people conflate this with root cause analysis. I'm going to break the cardinal rule. I'm going to read from the damn slide. With the unknown, one is confronted with danger, discomfort, and care. The first instinct is to abolish these painful states. The first principle is that any explanation is better than none. As engineers, we demand explanations for unexpected results. And the simpler they are, the better we think they might be. This is a lie that we tell ourselves. Quite frankly, if Mr. Occam and his razor was still alive, he'd be all upset. Things are not always simple, but we want them to be because we're thinking in linearly. Hindsight bias is one of the reasons why we think this. Hindsight, who knows what hindsight bias is? It is a psychological bias. It is arguably the most well-researched phenomenon in human psyche, I think. I read this on the internet, so it's probably true, ever. And what this means is that in hindsight, of an unexpected result or something bad or of an event, trying to come up with how it happened always will seem simpler. It makes, because you know the outcome, right? Judges and juries have to fight hindsight bias all the time. There's been situations where where a controlled experiment will tell people, look, there was an accidental death on a railroad. Forget as hard as you can that there was an accidental death on the railroad, and we need to figure out why that happened. People are unable to get that out of their minds. It makes steps towards failure appear foreseeable and obvious. And let me explain this. So after the fact, steps towards failure, steps towards something going wrong, looks like this. There was this thing, and then there was this thing, and then this guy pushed this code or something along those lines, and everything. So this is what it looks like after the fact. The reality is there were a number of different things going on that you are not including. People work on situations. People make decisions based on the experience that they have, the tooling that they have on hand, and the situational awareness that they have. You know that hindsight bias is coming on when you hear things, these are called counterfactuals. You should have known better. All the signs were there. All you had to do was pay attention. This is hindsight bias, which means that your view of the past is clouded. Before the accident, the future seems implausible. What? Wait, my wife is sleeping with my servant? Right? After the accident, it becomes obviously clear, right? All of a sudden, it was, then he leaves the house, Webster leaves the house, and he's like, of course. I saw this coffee cup on the table the other day, right? How could I not have seen it, right? If only, and how could they not see it coming, and that sort of thing. This is a lie. People's need to be right is stronger than their ability to be objective. The dirty step-cousin of hindsight bias, as if hindsight bias wasn't dirty enough, is outcome bias, and that is judging a past decision based on its outcome. We're going to talk a little bit about this later. Instead of judging it based on the quality of the decision at the time, given what was known at the time, we are going to judge the decision based on what the outcome was, right? The outcome was really bad. It must have been a really bad decision, which says something about that person. Again, lie. So this root cause analysis and trying to figure out what happened, when, what were the steps, there's been a lot of research about this, right? Who's heard of the 5 whys? All right, this is a popular one. And Eric Ries, who I think is awesome, has popularized the 5 whys. It comes from Toyota and lean production. It's not the only method. It's not the only method. Some are more complex than others. A little sort of review here. The idea of the 5 whys, or really any sort of singular root cause analysis situation, looks a little bit like this. You've got this thing. There was this outage. You ask, well, why did we have this outage? Well, the router went down. Okay. So why did the router go down? Well, because we had a terrible power cable. Well, why do we have a terrible cable? Well, it's because we bought the cheap one. Well, why did we buy the cheap one? Because we were running out of funding, so on and so on. Do you notice this looks like a line, right? As if there were no other influences. It can be mistaken for comprehensive causality. Well, of course, you just walk along this thing. It's not. It's a place to start, but it's too tempting to think that one just simply led to the other and nothing else was going on. Even when you have multiple contributors, and they do exist, it's still a sequential model. And accident investigators look at this sort of thing. This is called the domino, or sequence of events, right? I'm going to probably, this is an anecdote that you've probably heard before when it comes to troubleshooting. Eric Hallnagel says it. So looking for causes in a singular chain of events is like a drunk looking for keys in the night. not looking where he lost him, but in the light of the street lamp, because you know the light's better there. So when you have this sequence of events, right, it is simple, it's easy to explain. Oh, we did this guy did this, and this, and this, and this, and this. But it solves for a very specific case. It's completely ignorant of the situation that the people were in, the system was in. It is absolutely only focused on components, and it validates hindsight bias. So it's not helpful. Accident investigators, throughout sometimes in the 70s, came up with a different model called the epidemiological model, which is a little bit more sophisticated, otherwise known as the Swiss cheese model. My keynote graphic skills are for the win. So what does this mean? This means that if you view, again, this is a mental model, if you view Swiss cheese where holes are active or latent failures just waiting to happen, bad things waiting to happen, and that the cheese is essentially barriers, layers of defense from preventing those things from happening, then you can line these up. You can then think, okay, it's a little bit more, that's not just one step towards the eventual cliff that you're going to get off of. Let's imagine that you have some of these are code, there's servers. Let's say that some of this is schedule. Let's say take the people into account, and let's say this is training, okay? So it kind of goes like this. This is, again, I'm making up this, but I'm assuming this looks familiar. So you've got, say, a latent condition, unmonitored disk space. You've got a capacity miscalculation. That's a latent condition. You've got a unit test that's in transition. It needs to be fixed. You've got violations of known coding standards. That's a good one. There's a bug introduced by an active, that's an active failure. And let's say that there's something out of your control that you think is out of your control, an external API call, okay? So you line these up, and failure. This is where a mixture of these defenses can just particularly line up. If it wasn't this day, it wasn't that day. If this guy didn't come in because he was, because he was sick, well, then it wouldn't happen, and that sort of thing, that sort of stuff. And of course, the answer to this, right, is to just simply turn the cheese around. And introduce this defense, and then of course you have no failure. And this has been this mental model, this accident model has been used in large-scale catastrophic events. Again, cheers to web operations. We don't kill people when shit goes wrong, but this is better. It's decomposable. It is a little bit more complex, but it is still linear. Okay. It helps uncover multiple contributors, so you're not just singly walking down this line. There's an idea of linear because they're lining up. But it doesn't explain the lineups, doesn't help you prevent it. What, make the guy sick so that he doesn't come in? It only identifies these defects and gaps and nothing more, and it still encourages judgments of decisions that you make along this chain. So it's better, but it's still not helpful. The part about the Swiss cheese model is that it gets really close. The signature of these complex systems is that they have multiple contributors, right? Each necessary, but only jointly sufficient. So here's an option. We had a developer come in from outside, a consultant come in from outside the company, is working on some code, pulling some like warnings and bugs out, and he was working on checkout code, but it was okay. He ran all of the tests. Unit tests passed. He didn't realize that the unit tests were in transition from one to the other, from one type of checkout types of code to another type of checkout code, and he had lots of confidence. He thought that everything was okay given the tools he had on hand, and it broke checkout. Right? There were multiple contributors. It wasn't just come down to the guy made a mistake. Resultant versus emergent. Complex systems have emergent behaviors, like I said. So instead, there's a systemic model, right? So let's take a look at this. There's a router, there's a database, there's memcache, right? And let's say you've got a feature roadmap. right? That affects things. And you've got your last round of funding coming up. That affects things. Let's say you've got some dashboards that may or may not have good dashboard design. The DBA's car is in the shop. There's no engineering training this week because the trainer is sick. By the way, also email is down. The entire ops team is at the Velocity conference. There's a TechCrunch article that's going on. You're having some hiring difficulties. S3 is slow. All of these things affect all of them. You want to say that you just had this single bug, feel free. You're wrong. Multiple contributors, only jointly sufficient. And unless you ask enough questions about the circumstances and of all of the people, you will find that even in the simplest postmortems, it might have taken 2 people. It might have taken 3 people. It might have taken 2 people in a circumstance that is out of the control of the organization. Systemic models are hard. It means that, these are my awesome transitions. It means that safety is an emergent property that you can't measure. And that makes engineers feel uncomfortable because I want a graph. I want a graph that says everything is going to be okay, although because this is, I'm not going to have confidence. Functional residence, where, again, there's the queuing, and here's the key value store, and here's the different types of code. Interconnected, they can produce these sorts of things. Causes are constructed when we tell ourselves a story during a postmortem. Oh, you did this, you did this. You get a bunch of people around a table, and they tell a story about what they did during the issue. They bring it up because they want to contribute. They might have, whatever they did, what they're saying might not have anything to do with what happened. But you're going to write it down, and if they said it, maybe it probably has something to do with it because they said it and they're at the postmortem meeting. What you look for is what you find. What you call root cause is simply the place where you stop looking. There are contributors, again, there are contributors, not causes, because there is no root single cause. What you deem causal depends on your accident model, whether you think about it as domino, a Swiss cheese, or something else, right? Finding root cause of a failure is like finding the root cause of a success. That's what working in complex systems means. So we're not done yet. Postmortems are about learning, and it's about learning about lots of things. It's about quantifying response. We've got all these metrics now. We went over them earlier. It's about qualifying response. How did people feel? Did we have enough tools on hand? Did we have to improvise tools, right? Did we have to write something on the fly? Did everybody have enough awareness that there was a graph for this particular thing that could have told you? Did we have the right metrics and that sort of thing? How did people interact during the issue? Was there fatigue? Was there handoff? Was it so long that you had to say, you, and you, go home? Because you're only you're getting tired, and we need new, fresh eyes on this. So now you gather, this is the whole package. This is what a skillful postmortem means, and this is what having a mature, learning cornerstone of resilience means. It is part, and it informs all of the others, because then you say, oh, hey, we hadn't thought that this possible thing could have happened. Well, we'll now try to think that this could possibly happen. We didn't know that we didn't have this monitor. Now we know. Human error, which is what people say sometimes in postmortems. Who has seen postmortem? Who has seen a human error, the term, on a postmortem report? Right, and you end up there and you say, human error, what are you going to do? The issue is that knowledge and error flow from the same mental sources, right? Actions that result in error in actions come from the same motivation. Actions result in error and actions that result in success come from the same motivations. Nobody comes to work to do a bad job. Human error is not the place where you stop. Human error is the place where you start, and that's where you start asking questions. It's not a cause, it is an effect. And here's the key question The key question that you should always ask, especially when there are multiple contributing causes, especially when somebody has said, I made this thing, I may not have caused it, but my thing, including that guy's thing, including this dude's thing, we all did some of these actions and they all came together and it exploded in some awesome perfect storm of outage suckness. Why did it make sense to the person at the time? You can't have a human error. It's a terrible label. They didn't make an error. Who here plans to make an error? It made sense to you at the time that you made an action that had a surprising effect, because if you thought it was going to have a surprising effect, you wouldn't have done it. This is what understanding human error is about, and this is the heart of this systemic accident model.